Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while. Glad you're back. We got some stuff to go over today. It's going to be strictly analysis. We're going to start with some Bitcoin on-chain analysis. Then we're going to do some Bitcoin chart analysis. I have some pretty interesting patterns to show you for Bitcoin that might be indicating the price could be dropping a little bit from here before a bounce up. So take a look at this and tell me what you think in the comments. For EGLD, we're also going to be doing some interesting analysis. I've been looking at the chart for EGLD this morning and looking at all the different patterns that I see to see what is the most visible, the most prevalent pattern for a longer term, and what does it mean? So we're going to go over that today. I want you to check it out. I haven't seen anyone else mention this yet. Maybe they have and I've just missed it, but take a look and let me know what you think in the comments. That's pretty much the game plan. So we're going to get started in a sec. First thing I want to tell you, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check the description for my Twitter link. I post a lot of updates throughout the week there, and I think you'll enjoy it. And follow me on anything else you want. I have referral codes down there for crypto quant, on-chain analysis, for strike, and all kinds of other stuff. So check the description out. You might find something cool in there. But let's get started. All right, here we go. We're going to start off first looking at some on-chain analysis for Bitcoin. All right, this is all very structured, the order we're going in, so you should find this interesting. Let's go. All right, first thing we're going to do is switch over to this view, get the screen sharing going. All right, we're gonna go into our full screen mode. Okay, so in full screen mode here, the first thing that I want you to look at is the NVT ratio. All right, I'm gonna move this over to the left-hand side. Now the NVT ratio, basically what this is showing us is this is telling us that it's called the network value to transaction ratio for Bitcoin. Now the interesting thing is this is estimating the network value based on what we are seeing in the chart right now. So what I want you to take a really good look at is this metric here. Okay, so I'm going to move these a little bit so you can see it a bit. So the first thing we're doing is we're looking on the left-hand side at exactly where the prices for Bitcoin were. All right, so the first thing to note is right here on the top right. This is where Bitcoin is right now. Okay, so the price is 62,000. And the one thing you want to take a look at is when we had our prior all-time high, the price was at around 63,800. So we're kind of hitting that same area, but I want you to look at where the network value is estimated. So at this point, when we first hit the high, the network value was sitting at this level here. On the left-hand side, you can see that's about 10 or 9.88. Okay, now basically what we are seeing is that the NVT ratio has kept dropping while the price has increased. But the interesting thing is this is the network value. So it's showing us that the network is actually undervalued right now based on where the price is. So this is a very interesting metric because seeing that the network is undervalued would lead you to believe that the price would continue going up and the NVT ratio would start rising. Normally, you're going to see the NVT ratio drop while the price drops, like we saw here, right? Price started dropping, NVT ratio started dropping. Here we had a little bit of a rise, the price started jumping, but the price was still consolidating. And what's happened to the NVT ratio? It's just kept going down. But now the prices kept going up. So that means that even at these high prices, the value is still undervalued based on the NVT ratio. So that's an interesting thing to look at. I suggest reading a bit more about this. It's a pretty interesting thing. The next thing we're going to look at is net flow. All right, net flow is something that I show you guys quite often, and pretty much what I want you to notice is that we had a lot of big inflows and outflows. So at this point here, the price was sitting at around 60,900, and we had an outflow of like 11,000 Bitcoin. Now, that much Bitcoin could have been an exchange wallet transfer. It could have been going into a cold wallet. We're not really sure exactly what that is, if it's actual net flow or not. But assuming it is actual net flow, that's a lot of Bitcoin that left the exchanges. And that's going to get us to our next thing. It's going to be the exchange reserves. But we'll keep looking at this for a sec, okay? You'll see that now as the price went up and it's been consolidating down and flatlining, you saw a few areas during this first dip where there was a lot of on-chain, or there was a lot of Bitcoin being sent onto exchanges. So this was like one transfer of about 2,700 BTC, another one of 3,000 something BTC. You saw about 2,000 exit the exchanges at the same time. So there was a lot of work going on here as far as people taking profits or people putting positions out. Since we've seen the price consolidate, you've started to see these drop a bit. We are seeing now that just yesterday, okay, so this is not even yesterday, this is technically last night, okay, so let's take a look at the time here. This is October 29th at 2300, so this was pretty much last night right before midnight. Eastern time is what I'm going by, but 2300 October 29th. You saw 1500 BTC go onto exchanges, and that was the biggest inflow we've seen over the last 24 hours. We've seen multiple outflows, multiple inflows. These are smaller numbers, 100, 300, 400 BTC, but for each of these that we have inflows, we have roughly the equivalent number of outflows. So that means trading going on, right? And it's been bringing the price down because as you're having these people bring Bitcoin onto exchanges and selling, price goes down, and you're having people buy those dips and take Bitcoin off the exchanges. So the reason I wanted to show this to you is just for the immediate short term, we see that over the last 4 or 5 hours from posting this video, we have seen inflows onto exchanges of 742 Bitcoin, and then once again for 728 Bitcoin, followed by an outflow there of almost 775 Bitcoin. So these inflows, we haven't seen them completely sell yet or outflow. So we could see a little bit more of a dip here as people continue to pick up Bitcoin at around the 60,000 to 6,100 level. Keep that in mind. Final thing we're gonna look at is the exchange reserves. Now the exchange reserves, this is pretty clear the way this works, okay? So what you're looking at on the right-hand side, the blue line, is the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, right? The reserve on the exchanges. What you've seen is that this number has been steadily dropping since March of 2020. Now, what does that mean? That means since March of 2020, when the price of Bitcoin crashed because of the pandemic, we basically saw a lot of people starting to buy Bitcoin. You started to see the price of Bitcoin go up until it went parabolic all the way up to the $64,000 mark, now actually $67,000 as the all-time high. And during that time, the reserve has continued to drop. It went up only when we had the crash from 60K down to 30K. During that time, you saw the exchange reserves go up a bit. Well, now with the price moving up, even with the dip we've been having, the exchange reserves have stayed at a very relatively low level and they've kept dropping. Now, if we look at where the exchange reserves are today and compare it back to a point in time to see where was the price of Bitcoin the last time the exchange reserves were so low. Well, we see that the intersection is here in August 2018. And if you go down, you'll see the price of Bitcoin at that time was between around 6,100 to about 7,000, right? So we've marked that here. Now, the interesting thing about this is that if you have the exchange volume, like the exchange reserve, go down to an area where the price was last 6,100 to 7,200, and then from there the exchange reserve went up. Well, the interesting thing is now the price is only going higher. It's at the $60,000 level and it's moving up, and the exchange reserve is back down to those levels. So what that tells me is it's very unlikely that we see the trend shift up here like it did the last time. Right? This was a continuation of an existing uptrend. And I think what we're going to see now with the exchange reserve is a continuing depreciation. We're going to see it continue to drop, and we're going to see the price sequentially begin to rise. The only time I think you're going to see the exchange reserves rise significantly now are when we have those big 30, 40, 50% drops. When that happens, you're probably going to see some flow back onto the exchanges, but it's probably going to peak at the same levels that it did the last time when we dropped from 60K to 30K, which is still very low. And more than likely, this will start putting in lower highs and this will continue to move down until such time we reach the bear market and it changes. But that's the on-chain info that I wanted you to be aware of, because our next piece when we're looking at the charts is going to be related to this. So let's move on. All right, so this is the Bitcoin chart. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is what these zones are. I've been putting these on Twitter and kind of letting people know on Quick Take and a few other places where I post what I think is happening. I'm going to give you the full version of it today. So basically what's happening here is that we have a number of different support zones because we're moving in a downtrend right now, right? We're putting in lower highs, we're putting in lower lows, we're definitely moving down. So if we're moving down, we need to know our support and resistance levels. Well, the first zone is right here, okay, this purple zone. Now this zone, basically, we've hit it in a couple of areas already. We came and we got support on it here, we got resistance on it here, we almost broke above it and we hit the bottom of our top zone, which I'll go over at the end why that zone is there. And then basically we came back down and we got support on our next zone. Now we came up and we've gotten resistance on the top of this zone again, and we're getting support below it. Well, what's interesting is we've definitely confirmed this zone, and we almost have a confirmation on this zone that these are valid areas of support and resistance. So the fact is now, as we're moving in this zone, if we drop out of it, what we're looking to see is, do we continue to get support on this zone, which is the bottom one at 58K? If we don't, and then we drop below, you can expect our next support at 57, which is the bottom part of this zone. If we fall below that, then you're looking at us to go to 55K for support. If we fall below that, the next support level is at around 54. Now, we don't really want to go much further than that, because even if you look at this as a, as a percentage, what you can see here is that from the top down to this bottom zone, that's about 20%. That's a decent drop. Bitcoin has been known to do much more than that, 30, 40%. At this point in time, I'm finding it unlikely that we go much further than 20%. I don't even think we'll go the full 20%, but I do think that we may see some more drops into these zones, and I'll show you why. Okay, there's a pattern that's showing up on this Bitcoin chart. I'm looking at the 4-hour right now. That is quite visible. You might not see it at first glance, but it's there. And I'm going to show it to you so you understand what I'm talking about. So this is the pattern here. It's called a descending broadening wedge. Now, when we look at a descending broadening wedge, the interesting thing about this is you put in a pattern just like this coming from a drop. You put in a pattern moving down, right? What are you doing here? Well, your highs are becoming lower, so you're putting in lower highs. And then your lows are becoming lower, you're putting in lower lows. Now, what ends up happening with a pattern like this most of the time is that it moves to the upside. What happens is you get to a certain point where you start breaking out of the trend. Okay, that's your confirmation. Once you break out of that trend, then you expect the minimum target to be where you had the first major spike to the trend line. Okay, that gives you your minimum target. And the next thing you expect is for your uptrend to begin. If you come down, you get confirmation of the breakout, and you hit the minimum target, that's a good indication that you are heading in a much higher direction. And I think that's what we're going to see. Let's go back to the chart so I can show it to you. So in the chart here, I'll turn on the descending broadening wedge. All right, and let's go back into this view so you can see the screen a bit better now. So in this view, basically what we are seeing here now is that this is the pattern that's forming, right? If we go back to this, you'll see it's very, very similar. The descending broadening wedge is what we're looking at on the 4-hour. So that could mean that if we do end up seeing this pattern play out, we have the potential of a drop coming down to right around, well, 55K, right around the top of our bottom regret or our bottom zone, that support zone. So if we come and we touch right around here, and we hit the top of this zone and we bounce off, well, then the next thing you'll expect to see is to come back up to around this level. We can extend this out slightly, right, to come back up to around this level here, and this move will be your final confirmation. A breakout here will be your initial confirmation. Once you hit this target where you first topped on this trend line, well, that's going to be the confirmation that you're about to move to much higher prices. Now, looking at the 4-hour chart, if this plays out, well, what we're looking at is we're looking at coming down to the 55K level by like November the 1st. That's not too far. We're talking a couple of days. We could be taking a drop down to around 55K. Then we're talking about moving up by around November the 5th and breaking out. If this plays out exactly like it's showing here, obviously things could change, right? We could just go sideways and we could have a breakout, and this might never play out. So this is nowhere near confirmed, but if we do drop down to around 55K and we see a bounce and we start moving like this, right? If the price comes down, it touches here, and we see a bounce back up to here. If you see this happen, well, then it's a very good indication that the price might be about to just break out massively. It could also mean that maybe we're going to come back down and extend this, right? Go down to 50K and then come back up. And this is where we have our breakout. back up to that main level. So either one of these is a possibility, right? It could end here or it could continue and see us take a bigger drop to around 50 to 52K. But I wanted to show this to you because right now it's still early for this chart, but it's possible that this may be what we are witnessing. We have to get the confirmation, right? On the 4-hour, this is definitely possible. Once you switch to the daily chart, well, it looks like it's possible on the daily chart as well, but the daily chart's on a much longer time frame, right? We might actually end up seeing a trend completely different than what it looks like on the chart right now, right? This could end up going like this on the daily chart, right? You could see a much more different type of pattern. It could be like this, and you could see a drop down to only this level here, which is 56K, followed by a jump up. So it could be similar, it could change. I'm just saying right now, I wouldn't put a lot of faith on this on the daily, which means this is a more short-term prediction, assuming that this plays out. So keep an eye on it. I'm going to keep this on my Bitcoin chart. The link is in the description below if you want to see how this plays out over the next few days. Because if this does play out, it shows us something that maybe a lot of people aren't seeing, because everyone just assumes that Bitcoin's always going to go up, right? But what it could be telling us is that there could very soon be a possibility that you can buy some Bitcoin at around 55 to 54K, and that might be your last opportunity before it bounces back up and breaks out of here. Unless this extends or unless this pattern just gets completely invalidated, but you should be aware of it, so keep an eye on it. All right, now that's all the Bitcoin stuff for today. Bitcoin overall, I think it's still going to break the 100K mark before the end of December. So this is short term from what might happen in the next week, right? But come December, January, I think you're going to see Bitcoin well over 100K. Let's see if that happens too. Also a prediction, but I think it's a fairly good one based on the state of the global economies. All right, let's move forward. We're going to go straight over to EGLD. I have some interesting stuff to show you there as well. So we're going to go to EGLD here, and the first thing you see on EGLD is the original chart we've been following, right? This is the prediction that we've been following for quite some time on my Twitter, and basically what this was a symmetrical triangle with a breakout target sitting at 386. Right now, the price is sitting at 264. So we could be seeing two things happening here, right? We could be seeing that we bounced off the apex, which we did, right? If you look here, we came down, we wicked below, and then we had a bounce almost exactly where the apex is, and now we're working our way up. When you have a bounce out of the apex, that could be a pretty good indication that you're going to follow a very aggressive trend line to the upside, and you're going to move up like this, right? So following that we go this way could be looking at the mid 300s, by mid-November. Definitely possible. So that's one possibility that we see, but I like to look at what looks like it is the most current as far as patterns go. And this pattern is no longer current, right? We had this symmetrical triangle, we broke out of it, and now we bounced off of it. So that is a possibility that it moves up in that aggressive trend. But I want to look at what other patterns are appearing here. And there's a major one that I see. So we are now going to turn this pattern off, and we're going to show you this, all right? This here is the one that I'm talking about, all right? This pattern is essentially called an ascending triangle. Now, the ascending triangle is pretty interesting, right? What you see within ascending triangle is that you see almost a flat upper trend line. So your upper trend line is roughly flat. And then what you see at the bottom is that the price is moving up. So you're putting in a rising lower trend line. You're basically at the bottom, you're hitting higher lows. At the top, you're getting a flat top. That's, it's like a flat resistance top. And usually this comes from an uptrend, and this is your consolidation phase. Then, once you break out, you have a trend continuation, which is a continuation of the uptrend that you were originally in. You consolidate here, and then you keep moving up. Okay, well, let's take a look at EGLD again. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So you can see first thing, we have our trend. That's our prior trend. It was an uptrend. Then we had a breakout. Now we're having a continuation. And let's turn this on, and you can see what the continuation looks like. Well, the continuation looks like it might just be turning into an ascending triangle, just like we looked at. And if this is the case, well, the first thing that we're going to assume is that we're going to continue moving in this trend line, which means that we're going to keep getting resistance at the 300 level. And I want you to look at the timeline for this, all right? The breakout is projected around November 26th. That just happens to fall right around Christmas, or right around Thanksgiving time. And the funny thing about it is that, and this is actually a little bit off, this should be slightly higher. There we go. This should be, so this right here is the 300 level. So let's change this. Okay, so the first price is at 300. All right, and that'll tell us right here where we should be. This should be at 430. So let's change that also. Perfect. Okay, so basically what this shows us is that we are looking at a possibility that this ascending triangle is exactly what we're seeing. I mean, take a look at this one more time. All right, and now take a look at EGLD. All right, it's almost exactly the same. So now we're going to go into the view so you can see it a bit better. And basically what this tells me, very simple, right? The price would, if this is actually what's happening, the price was continue moving and setting in higher lows, meaning that we're looking at another potential drop to around 246 to 250, right? We shouldn't drop much further than that unless it's a wick. And then we would come up, we'd still get resistance on 300. Well, somewhere in this area in mid-November, the Maiar DEX is going to be released. When the Maiar DEX is going to be released, I think we're going to start seeing ourselves break that 300 level, and we're going to see the breakout. So even though the breakout per this chart is projected in November 27th, I think it could be a little bit earlier. And it could be with anticipation of the DEX. It could be once the DEX is released, just seeing how easy it is, how fun it is, and how much, you know, how little you pay on transaction costs compared to like Ethereum. Then you might have users start coming in and wanting to put their NFTs on here and put other things on here and accumulating EGLD. That could easily lead to a breakout, and we could see the target come up. Now, our previous target was 365. Well, if this ascending triangle plays out, our target is now 430. That's a minimum. That's a minimum target of 430 if this plays out, and the timeline seems to fit really well with the DEX. So I want you to keep that in mind. Look at my chart in the description for EGLD and follow this, right? I'm going to keep the chart up until it's either invalidated or confirmed. One of those two things is going to happen, and right now it gives us an idea of what to look at for the price and a timeline to look at, and possibly when to expect a breakout at the latest if this pattern follows. Overall, I think EGLD is going to be a lot bigger than a lot of people think. Part of the reason is that the only other option right now for a good platform for NFTs and for swaps and anything like that is really Ethereum, right? Cardano is good, but Cardano's marketplace just hasn't evolved enough. And honestly, when it comes to your ways of interacting with the Cardano blockchain, they're not as advanced as EGLD. EGLD has created all of that beforehand, and now they're integrating the feature sets into it. Maiar alone, in my opinion, makes the Elrond blockchain far more usable, and I'm talking about the mobile app, far more usable than Cardano. You don't have anything similar for Cardano. You don't have anything native to the blockchain, right? That's as good. So basically, what are you forced to do? Well, you're forced to find other ways to use it, and that's why we haven't seen mass adoption come to Cardano. Most people have bought Cardano as an asset because they see the potential of it getting there. Well, EGLD has already created all of that. Elrond has that stuff already. It has the mobile app. It has a great platform for the DEX that we saw in beta and the testnet. Now, all of that's going to go live. Everyone's going to have immediate access to it. And once you have the marketplace with all the NFTs and all those things, it's linked directly to the DEX, which is linked directly to Maiar. It's accessible on your phone. You can connect your wallet on a browser. Well, I think you're going to see a lot of people who have stuff on Ethereum, a lot of artists that are selling NFTs on Ethereum want to come to Elrond because they're going to pay a fraction of the price to put that NFT out there. And then you find out that EGLD itself is a limited supply asset. It's running very low on supply. The floating supply is dropping. They already reached a point just a month ago where Binance had to reload its supply because it was running out. And you can see all those numbers, right? The staking numbers continue going up. The total floating supply continues to drop. The circulating supply, well, basically what's going to end up happening with that is that the circulating supply is going to start dropping in a sense. It's not going to grow as fast, right? Basically with Elrond, as you start having inflation, right? As you start having user adoption, you have inflation for the staking rewards. There's a certain portion of the EGLD token or the EGLD economy that is created and built around this inflation. Now what happens is when you have crazy adoption and the transactions start to increase, more users coming in, well, that inflation rate starts to drop. You start creating a lot less tokens. You're not minting many new EGLD tokens. And at the same time, your transaction fees are increasing and they're covering the staking rewards. The more that happens, the lower the supply, the max supply of eGold gets. So it could go a little higher over time until we reach such time, but I think what you're going to see is eGold is probably going to max out at like a total supply of 21, 22, 23 million. I don't think there'll be any more than that. It may not even get that high. So we'll see, because adoption for something like this could grow massively because you can't use Ethereum. If you want to do stuff, if you want to put your NFTs on Ethereum, get ready to lay down a lot of money in transaction fees just to mint it. And then when you sell it, you might not make back what you put in just in gas fees. It's ridiculous. It's not a way to do business. Elrond is going to change that. And I think we're going to start seeing that a pattern like this is very feasible. And we could break out earlier, right? If the DEX is released November 10th and November 11th, well, you could see a breakout over here, right? The price could just bottom out at 250 one more time and come back to this level and just break out early. You know, it's possible. So keep an eye on it. I mean, right now I think is a great time to accumulate. I continue to accumulate at these levels because I think they're not going to be around as long as people think. You know, this in my opinion is just the calm before the storm. eGold has done something very interesting historically. It's turned every all-time high into a prior support. And as it keeps doing that, its market cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, meaning it is pumping faster and faster and faster. And I think we're going to see the same thing because now it's going to reach a point where it can really start taking some market share away from Ethereum and Cardano. So keep an eye on all this. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found the information useful. And I hope you check me out on Twitter. I'll be messaging you there. Hopefully we'll have another video tomorrow where I go over the charts for Ethereum and Cardano. And soon enough, we'll also do one video dedicated to other altcoins where we'll go over things like Polkadot, Matic, Celsius, and a few others. There's a bunch of others on the list. I'll just kind of go through my watch list. We'll start checking them all off, and we'll do that in one dedicated, maybe 20, 30-minute video. Maybe Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, sometime in the next few days. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed it. And I look forward to hearing from you in the comments and on my Twitter. I will catch you soon. Make sure you check out my Twitter. I put a post on there giving you a little preview of how my NFTs are going to be released to the Elrond blockchain. I'm still working on them. I don't have a lot of free time, so I'm only creating 10 plus one special one that I think you guys will like. And the prices are listed there. It's going to be 0.5 eGold for each of the 10 and then 1 eGold for the bonus NFT. And those will be released when the marketplace is live. No pre-sale, so whoever wants them, you can grab them on the market. You know, let's start a little limited supply collection here, all right? 10 for now, plus 1 bonus. Maybe at some point in the future, if I have time, we'll do another collection. If I ever do another collection, it'll be a completely different theme. And each of these, in my opinion, will be collector's items. So I don't even mind hanging on to them myself. Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful weekend and be ready for anything. Peace.